Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to learn how to integrate the Stripe checkout with a Node.js application. You can check the Stripe official documentation by visiting docs.stripe.com and click on APIs and SDKs and select the API option. And the documentation is a bit extensive because there's a lot you can do with Stripe, but we're going to use the checkout option where you can find on the left side menu here under the checkout options, and you can select the session option. So what we need to do is create a new session. So you can select the create a session option, and you can find examples here on the right side for different technologies. So I'll choose Node.js here. And we could call the API endpoints directly using something like Axios or NodeFetch, but it's recommended to use the Stripe module instead because it makes our life a lot easier. So in our Node application, we have to import the Stripe module, passing this key here as a parameter. And I'll show you later how to get this key. And next, we need to create a session using the Stripe checkout sessions create, passing an object containing details of the products that the customer is purchasing, the shipping address, billing address, and other parameters that you can find here in the documentation. But I'll show you all the parameters we need to send and the response we're going to get back when we start coding. So what we're going to do is create a simple page simulating a shopping cart with some products, and when the user clicks on proceed to checkout button, we're going to create a checkout session with the products on the shopping cart, and we'll redirect the user to the Stripe checkout page where the user can enter the payment details and the shipping address as well. And once everything is complete, the user can click on pay, and if everything is okay, the user will be redirected to a success page and will receive the payment on our Stripe dashboard. Okay, so before we start coding, the first thing you need to do is to create a Stripe account if you don't have one yet, by visiting the official Stripe website, which is stripe.com. And you can click on sign in on the top right. And if you don't have an account, you can click on sign up, and it will ask your personal details. Once you finish filling out, you can click on create account, and Stripe will send an email so you can verify your account. I already have an account, so I'll sign in with one of my personal accounts here. Okay, so this is the Stripe dashboard, and as you can see here on the top left, we are in test mode. That means that all transactions we make for now, all payments we'll receive will be fake, just so we can test and make sure everything is working before going live. And by default, Stripe already created a business account for us, which is called New Business, as you can see here on the top. And we can change the name of this business here by clicking on Edit and enter the new name. And if we click on Developers option here on the top, and then on API Keys tab, so we have two keys here. The publishable key, which is used on the client side, on the front end, and we can create card elements and other payment elements. We can create tokens, but we're not going to use this key on this video since we're going to focus more on the server side, but we'll definitely use on future videos. And there's also the secret key, which is used on the server side. So this is the key that we'll be using on our Node.js application. But let's say we're creating a project for a store, e-commerce, or another business to sell services or products. So let's create a new business account here on Stripe dashboard with new API keys as well. So we can click here on the business accounts drop down and select create new account. And the name of this new account, I'll just add manfra.io for example, but you can use the name you prefer. And the country I'll just leave as United States, and we can click on create. Perfect, so now we have the manfra.io business account selected, and let's click on developers option again, then on API keys tab. And here are the new keys related to the manfra.io business account. We'll get back later on this page to copy the secret key and store securely in our Node.js application. Okay, so we can get started on coding. I'll be using VS Code for this tutorial, but feel free to use the code editor you like. And I have an empty folder open here on VS Code, which is called Stripe Checkout with Node.js. Let's start by creating our Node.js application by opening the terminal here on the top and type npm init. Once we hit enter, it will ask a few questions and we can just hit enter for everything, because later we can change all this information if we need. Is this okay? Yes. Great. So now we have the package.json file created with the details of our application. And now let's install the modules that we'll be using. So back on the terminal, let me clear here. And I'll type npm install. And we'll be using Express to organize our routes. And the Stripe module. The EJS module for our template engine. And last, the .env module to securely store the Stripe secret key. But if you're using Node version 20.6.0, Node already comes with a built-in functionality to store environment variables. But for this example, I'll just be using the .env module. Okay, hit enter. And great, modules installed, and you can see here on the package.json file under the dependencies object. And also on the package.json file, there's a main property here pointing to an index.js file, which is going to be our main file. So let's create this file here on the root. So new file, index.js. Now inside the index.js file, I'm just going to paste some lines of code here because in all Node tutorials here on the channel, I just keep repeating myself with just setting up a basic Express server. So here we're just bringing our dependencies and initializing the .env module. And here we are importing and initializing Express inside an app constant. Here we are setting the view engine as EJS. And here we are creating an index route, like a home route, that is just going to render an index template that we're going to create. And then we're starting our server on port 3000. Okay, very simple. And here on the root, we need to create our .env file to store our environment variables. So new file, .env. We'll get back on this file later. And we need to create a folder to store our EJS template files. So new folder, and I'll call this folder views. And inside this folder, let's create the index file that we are rendering here on the home route. So new file, index.ejs. And inside this file, if you're using VS Code, you can type HTML and select this HTML column 5 here. And VS Code will create a basic HTML template here for us. And let me change the title here to shopping cart, because this page will simulate a shopping cart page. And we're not going to create any styles, any CSS files for this example. We just want a basic template. So inside the body here, I'll just create an H1 and I'll put shopping cart. And below, I'll create an H3 with the name of a product. So I'll put Node.js and Express book. And a paragraph with the price, and it's gonna be equals to $50. And I'll add another paragraph here with the quantity, and for this product I'll just add one. Now we need to add a form here, and this form action is gonna call the /checkout route. So we're gonna create this checkout route later, and this is going to be a post request. So method is equals to post. Okay, and inside this form, all we need is a submit button. So I'll add an input here of type submit. And the value, I'll just put proceed to checkout. All right, and that's it. So let me save this. And we should be able to run our application here on the terminal. So let me clear and type node index.js or just index. Okay, hit enter, and we got server started on port 3000. Now if we go to the browser and open a new tab and type localhost 3000, and there it is, just a simple page simulating a shopping cart with just one product. And if we click on proceed to checkout, it's gonna make a request to /checkout, but we haven't created this route yet on the index.js file. So it's not gonna do anything for now. Now, every time we change something on our app, we need to stop the server by pressing Ctrl+C and run again the node index.js command. So I'm going to install a module called nodemon, which will keep listening for changes inside our app, and every time we save a file, nodemon will restart the server for us automatically. So let me stop the server here on the terminal, and we can install nodemon as a global dependency, so we don't need to add any extra configuration. I already have nodemon installed, and the command to install nodemon globally is npm install nodemon, and you need to add a global flag here, which is -g. And maybe you'll need to add sudo here on the front, since it's installing a global dependency. Once you hit enter, nodemon will be installed, and now all you need to do is type nodemon and hit enter. And now every change we made, once we save the file, nodemon will restart the server for us. We can even close the terminal here for now. Okay, so now we'll create the integration with Stripe. So the first thing we need to do is copy the secret key from the dashboard. So here on the developers page, API keys tab, we can click on review test key and click on top of the key to copy. Now let's store this key inside the .env file. So I'll create a new environment variable called stripe underscore secret underscore key, which is equals to the key we just copied. Perfect. Now back on the index.js file, we need to import the stripe module here on the top. So below the express import, I'll add const stripe equals to require stripe. And to initialize stripe, we need to add parentheses here, and inside the stripe secret key that we added here on the .env file. And to get the content from the stripe secret key, we need to call process.env.stripe secret key. Great. Now we need to create the checkout route we're calling once the user clicks on the proceed to checkout button inside the form on the index.js file. So on the index.js file, let's create this route below the home route. So app.post, and the name of the route is /checkout, and we need the request and response parameters, arrow function, and inside we need to create the checkout session. So I'll create a new const called session equals to await stripe.checkout.sessions.create, and this will receive an object. And since we're using the await word here to wait for this function to be executed, so we need to add the async word before the request and response parameters from the route function. Okay, so inside the object, we need to set a few details so Stripe know what to do and show the correct information on the checkout page. So we'll add the mode property, which is equals to payment. That means it will be a one-time payment. This can also be a subscription, which will charge the customer over a certain period. We will use this mode in future videos, but for now we're just going to use the payment. And we can set a property called success_URL, which is the URL the user will be redirect when the payment is complete. So let's add here HTTP localhost 3000/complete, for example. And we can also add a property called cancel_URL. If this property is set, the checkout page will display a back button and the customer will be redirected to the URL we'll configure here. So let's add HTTP localhost 3000, and we'll call this route /cancel, for example, and we'll create both these routes here on the index.js file. So we need to set a property for the products, so I'll just create above the mode here. And this property is called line_items, which is an array of items that the customer is purchasing. So let's add an object here, and inside we'll add the price underscore data property, which is also an object with the currency property. So this is the 3-letter ISO currency code in lowercase. So I'll put USD, which stands for United States dollars, but make sure to change this to the currency you are accepting. Next, the product underscore data, which is also an object with the name of the product. So let's copy here from the index.ejs file. So the product name is Node.js and Expressbook. And let's paste inside the name here. And we could add other properties here like the description or the image of the product, but let's leave just the name for this example. So that's it for the product data property. And next we'll add the unit underscore amount, which is the product price, but we need to add in cents. So on the index.ejs file, we put the price as $50. So let's put 50 here times 100 to convert to cents. And that's it for the price data object. And we need to set the quantity property, which is the quantity of the line item being purchased. So for this product here, let's check. We just add 1. Great, so that's it for now. And let's write on the console the session const so we can see the result. So here on the bottom, console.log and inside session. Okay, let's save and test this on the browser. So I'll call the localhost 3000 here. And let's click on proceed to checkout. Now, as you can see, we didn't send any response to the client, to the browser, so it's just gonna keep waiting. And let's check the result on the terminal. And here's the response. Let me expand here. Okay, so as you can see, the session result has a lot of details. So here we have the session ID and some other details for the checkout session. But what we'll need here is the URL property. So if we copy this URL here and open on the browser, let me open a new tab here and paste the URL. So this is the checkout page. We should redirect the customer. And on the left side here, we have the total amount and the product details. And on the right side, we have the payment details where the customer can enter the card information or choose other payment types. For this example, we have the link here. We'll change some things on the checkout page later, like disable the link payment or maybe enable other payment methods as well. And we can add the shipping address as well, because as you can see, they're not here on this page. Now, if we click on the back button here on the top left, the customer will be redirected to the /cancel route, which we haven't created yet. Now, let's go back to the checkout page and let me enter the payment details here so we can test. So for the email, I'll just add any email address here. So email@domain.com. And for the card number, Stripe recommends to test 4242 for all numbers, which will return a success payment. So I'll just add 42 for everything here. And for the expiry date, we can add any date here. So I'll add January 25. And for the CVC, we can add any number as well. So I'll just add 123. For the card holder name, I'll put John Doe, for example. And the country I'll leave as Brazil. Okay, all good. And this option here is to save the payment details for our next purchase. But we won't use it for this tutorial, so we can leave unchecked. Great, so now we can click on pay. Okay, great. And the customer will be redirected to the /complete route. But it's showing this error here because we haven't created this route yet. Now, if we go to our Stripe dashboard and click on payment here on the left side, you can see that we receive one payment of $50, the payment method details and the customer email here. And if we click on this payment, we can see more details like the products the customer purchased and the total amount we actually received after the Stripe fee. And if we scroll down, we can see the customer details as well. Awesome, so the checkout information that we're passing to Stripe is working, and we need to do a few changes here. So inside the checkout route, we need to redirect the user to the Stripe checkout page, which is the URL here on the response. So let me remove this console log from here and add response.redirect and the session constant .url. Okay, now we need to create the routes that we configure here for the success URL and the cancel URL properties. Just one small change we need to do here, because we're testing our application on our personal machine, which is the local host. But when this application is in production, when it's live, we want to specify the actual domain for the production server. So we need to add this base URL here, which is the localhost 3000 on the .env file, because we'll have a different .env file with different variables here for the production environment. So this is one of the main reasons why we need to create an environment file like .env to make things easier and secure, of course, when we put the application in production. So let's create a new environment variable, which is going to be the base underscore URL. And for the development environment, I'll add the HTTP, localhost, and the port 3000. Now, back on the index.js file, on the success URL property, let me replace here with backticks and remove the localhost base URL from here, leaving just the /complete. And add $, curly braces, and inside process.env.base URL. Great, now the same for the cancel URL property, so backticks, and replace the localhost here with the $, curly braces, and call process.env.base URL. Perfect, so now everything is configured inside the .env file. Now let's create both these routes. So below the checkout post route, I'll add app.get, and the name is /complete. The request and response parameters, arrow function, and inside I'll just send a message to the customer. So response.send, and we'll add something like your payment was successful. Of course, when this is in production, you definitely want to create a nice template file here on the views folder and render to the customer. But since this is just an example, we'll make it simple. Now let's create the cancel route below the complete route. So app.get /cancel, the request and response parameters, arrow function, and inside let's send a message to the customer as well. So ras.send, and we'll put payment cancel. Actually, what we can do here is redirect the customer to the home route where we're rendering the index template. So instead here we'll call ras.redirect and the / here, which is the home route. We could add the home route directly here on the cancel URL property, but let's say you might want to save some information when the customer canceled the purchase. So we could do it here inside the cancel route and then redirect the customer back to the home route. So I'll leave it like this. Now let's save and test again. Back on the browser, and let me open the tab we were using already. I'll call the localhost 3000, and let's click on proceed to checkout. Great, and now the customer will be redirected to the Stripe checkout page, and if we click on the back button, the customer will be redirected to the cancel route and redirect again to the home route. Perfect. Now let's click on proceed to checkout again. Now before we enter the payment details and click on pay, let's change some things here on the page. Let's say we don't want other payment methods here and leave just the card payment method, or maybe add other payment methods as well. And to configure the payment methods, we can go to the Stripe dashboard and click on the settings icon here on the top and select settings. Next, we can click on the payments option and click on the Payment Methods tab. Okay, so if we scroll down here, you can see all payment methods we can enable or disable from the checkout page. So the card is active and we'll leave it like this. Now let's disable other payment methods. So the Apple Pay here, let's click and then click on turn off. Okay, now for the Cash App Pay as well. Okay, now for the link as well. So depending on the payment method we are turning off. Stripe will ask if we really want to turn off because it's a popular payment method. But for our example, we can turn it off. Okay, so now on the checkout page, it will only show the card option. So let's go back to the localhost 3000 and click on proceed to checkout. And great, as you can see now it's only showing the card payment method. And for the product items here, let's add another item so we can see how it looks. So back on the index.ejs file, let's add another product here on the page. So I'll add an BR tag here and copy the H3 in both paragraphs and paste below the BR tag. Now the second product name, I'll add JavaScript t-shirt, for example, and the price will be $20 and the quantity, let's put 2 here. Okay, now we need to pass these details inside the line items property. So let me copy the entire object here, add a comma and paste after the first product object. So the name of this other product will be, let me copy here and paste, and the price is 20 times 100. And for the quantity we added 2. Now note that the unit amount here is the price of each of this product item here, and the quantity is 2, so Stripe will calculate the total amount automatically for this product. Let's test and see how it looks. So save and back on the browser. Let me call the localhost 3000 again. Click on proceed to checkout. And there it is. So now the total amount is $90 and we have 2 items now. The Node.js Express book and 2 JavaScript t-shirts of $20 each, and the total amount is $40. Perfect. Now one last thing we need to change here is add the shipping address form so the customer can type the complete address so we can deliver the purchase product. So back on the index.js file, inside the checkout session object, all we need to do is add a property called shipping underscore address underscore collection. And this is an object, and inside we need to add the allowed underscore countries. This is an array of countries that we can deliver the product. So we need to add the 2-letter ISO code for the country. So for example, I'll add United States here, which is US, and Brazil, for example, which is BR. We could add other countries here, but for our example, I'll just leave these 2. And that's it. So let's save and test on the browser. So back on the localhost 3000, click on proceed to checkout again. And there it is. Now we have the shipping address inputs with the full name of the customer who will receive the products, the country dropdown with Brazil and United States, the address, and we can click on enter address manually here to show more details like the neighborhood, the city, the state, and the postal code. And if we change the country to United States, the fields will also change according to the address details of the country. So let's fill these inputs so we can test. So for the email, I'll just type the same email from before. And the name, I'll put John Doe again. And I'll leave the country as United States. And the address line 1, I'll add 100 Test Road. And the address line number 2, I'll add Unit 10. And for the city, I'll put San Diego, for example. And the zip code, I'll put 92000. and the state is already filled to California according to the zip code. Now for the payment details, the card number I'll add again 4242 to all numbers, and the expire date to January 25, and the CVC to 123. Now we can leave the billing info is same as shipping checked, but we can uncheck this and it's gonna ask for different billing information. So we'll leave as checked. And let's click on pay. Okay, processing. And great, we got redirect to the complete route and showing the message your payment was successful. Now let's check on the Stripe dashboard if the payment is there. So I'll click on the payment options on the left. And there it is. We have a new payment of amount $90. Let's open. And here are all the details like the customer details, the shipping details, the items the customer purchased, and the total amount after the Stripe fees. Awesome, everything is working perfectly. Now, what if we need to get the details of the payment here inside the complete route? So for example, we might want to store the details of the payment and the customer inside our database. So what we can do is add as a parameter the session ID here on the /complete route. And this session ID, we can get it when the checkout session is created. So here on the success URL property, we can pass a query parameter by adding a question mark on the end of the URL. And we'll name this parameter as session_ID equals to curly braces, and inside we can type checkout_session_ID, and Stripe will automatically replace this variable with the session ID. But we have to type exactly like this: session ID equals to checkout session ID, all in uppercase because this is a string literal. Now here inside the complete route, let's log the session ID from inside the URL. So console.log, and to get the session ID parameter, we can pass the request object .query.session_ID, just like we added here on the URL. Okay, let's save and test this on the browser again. So back on the localhost 3000, click on proceed to checkout. And I'll just fill all information here with the same details from before. Okay, click on pay. And great, we got your payment was successful. And here on the URL, we got the session ID as a parameter. And if we check on the terminal, here's the session ID. Now we can retrieve the checkout session details inside the complete route. For that, we can create a new const here, call session equals to await stripe.checkout.sessions.retrieve. And inside we need to pass the session ID. So request.query.session_ID. And it's showing an error here on the await because we need to add the async word before the request and response parameters, making this route asynchronous. Now let's log the session constant on the console. So I'll replace here to the session constant. Let's save and test again on the browser. Open the localhost 3000 and click on proceed to checkout. And I'll type the same information from before. Okay, click on pay. Okay, your payment was successful. Now back on the terminal. Let me expand here a little. And here are the complete object with all the details from the checkout, like the total amount, details of the customer, the shipping details, but it's not showing the items that the customer purchased, and also the card details, because we might need to inform the customer if we have any problems. So we could call another function here from Stripe to get the payment intent details by passing the payment_intent_ID return here on the response. Or we could add an extra parameter here inside the retrieve function, which is an object, and we can add the expand property, and this will be equals to an array of the details we like to expand. So for example, we can expand the payment underscore intent dot payment underscore method. So when we do this, instead of just showing the payment intent ID here, it will show a complete object with all payment details like the card number, last 4 digits, the expire date, the cardholder full name, and other details as well. And for the items, the products that the customer purchased, for that we'll need to call another stripe function because unfortunately we don't have a property to expand like we did for the payment intent. So below the session retrieve function, I'll add another const called line items equals to await stripe dot checkout dot sessions dot and the list line items function. And inside we need to pass the session ID, which we can get it from the query parameter inside the request. So request dot query dot session underscore ID. Now let's log the line items constant. So console dot log and the line items constant. Okay, let me close the explorer here. So note that we're calling 2 asynchronous functions here, but we are waiting for the retrieve function to be executed, and then we need to wait for the list line items function, and then we are sending the response. And the list line items function doesn't depend on the results of the retrieve function. So instead of calling like this, we can call these 2 functions in parallel. So I'll create a new constant called result equals to promise dot all, and we can add an array here passing both functions we want to execute. So I'll copy the stripe retrieve function here and paste inside the array. Now copy the list line items function, and let me break this in different lines here, add a comma, and paste the list line items function. So now we're calling these 2 functions at the same time. Great, now we can remove these 2 functions called, and instead of calling 2 console logs like this, we can call just one with the result constant. But the result constant here is a promise, so we need to add an await here in front of to await for the result. We can add directly inside the console log here or create a different constant and pass that new constant. Now some properties will return an object, so let's convert the result here to a string by adding the JSON.stringify method and the await result constant inside. Okay, so let's test all this. So I'll save and open up the browser. Open the localhost 3000 again. Click on proceed to checkout. Alright, and I'll type all details again from before. Okay, click on pay. And perfect, we got the your payment was successful message. Now back on the terminal. So we got this huge response here as a string. So let me copy all the response here. And here on the tabs, I'll click on new text file and paste the content here inside. Okay, now right click and select the format document. Okay, so now we have all details from before, and if you check the payment intent property, as you can see now it's an object with all the payment details. And inside we can check the card details with the brand and the expired month and expired year and the last 4 digits of the card. And if we keep scrolling, you'll find another object, which is the list line items details with the products that was purchased, like the Node.js and Express book, and also the JavaScript t-shirt details. So now we can actually grab the information that we need and store inside our database, for example. so we can have more control over the checkout and the payment details here inside the complete route. Great, so we saw in this video how to integrate the Stripe checkout on a Node.js application using the Stripe official module. And like I said on the beginning, we can do a lot with Stripe. So I really encourage you guys to read the documentation and understand more about Stripe. And we can test as many times as we want, because since we're in test mode, so all transactions will be fake and there aren't real money involved. I'll leave the GitHub repo link for this project on the description below. Hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can continue making more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you on the next video.